Hello and welcome to our Gems in the Alshich, and it's at a particularly unusual moment when synagogues all over the New York area where I live are closing for Shabbos because of the coronavirus and concerns about it. And that leads us into our Gems of the Alshich because I think perhaps there is a message. Don't get me wrong, I'm not a prophet. I'm not one of these people who say, this is happening because of this. I simply am way beyond my pay grade. However, whenever there is a crisis, as my teachers always point out, without prophets, all you have to do is say to yourself, is there anything that this triggers within me that I could do to improve? Is there a message to me in this that I could take on board and react positively to? Maybe there's a connection, as it were, in the Parsha that could lead us to a conclusion, positive one. The Parsha is Sisa, and this is for those who I could not find my my normal art scroll Chumash. My wife borrowed it, and we searched, but we couldn't find it. So it's chapter 30, and it starts at verse 11, which means a continuation of the previous parsha, the themes thereof. But let's see what we can make of this. V'yadaber Hashem al Moshe lemor, and Hashem speaks to Moshe, and he says, "Ki sisa esrosh b'nei Yisrael lifkudehem." When you count the Jewish people according to their numbers, perhaps would be the translation. But each one will give an atonement for his soul to Hashem. When you count them, so that there will not be amongst them a magefa, a plague, a negev. When you count them. So if you count Jews directly, there is a plague. And that's why we don't count Jews directly. If we need 10 Jews, male Jews, to constitute a minyan, the quorum, which is the minimum number for parts of the prayer service to be said collectively, then we don't count them directly. Some people use a verse, various verses from Psalms or whatever that would get 10 words. Being from the UK, I use Shakespeare. To be or not to be, that is the question. 10 words. To be. Will we have a minyan? Really quite good, that. Anyway, so you shouldn't count them directly. And Rashi says that everybody, each gives a coin. They each give a half a coin. So that's what it goes on to say. Let me read this a little bit to you. Ooh, turn the page. You can tell this goes out. This goes out live. No editing in this. Each one will give a max as a shekel, a half a silver coin. And that's what they're going to do. Don't count them. There'll be a plague. And I remember walking along with my son when he was just a little boy, my oldest son who lives in Yerushalayim, and he said to me, "Daddy, why should there be a plague if somebody counts you?" That doesn't make any sense. It's the person doing the counting that should get the plague. Interesting idea, this. Interesting question my son asked. I think he was only 10 or 11 at the time. But the Alshich wants to, well, he was with this. This is, of course, after the making of the golden calf. And after the making of the golden calf, then, of course, they were counted, and Rashi gives us a general principle. Whenever there is something goes wrong, dreadfully wrong, collectively with the Jewish people, God always counts them to let them know that, as it were, things have moved on, and He has forgiven them. But the Alshich, he says, well, I'll read this to you because I think it's interesting. The golden calf, listen to what he says. To understand what's really going on with this whole idea. Why was it at that time that each Jew would give the Hebrew is koifer nashe? Koifer is the same word as kapora, atonement, like Yom Kippur. Why and what had the Jews got to atone for? Well, the Egel Azov, the golden calf, obviously. Now she says, no, hold on a minute. Remember that whole thing. After the Jewish people make the golden calf, then at that point Moshe comes down. We all remember that bit. Dramatic, smashes the 10 Commandments on the ground. And then he says, famously, Mil Hashem alai, anybody who's on Hashem's side should stand beside me. The Levites gather around him, and they go and they kill the people who were actively involved, the instigators, the creators of the golden calf. Only 3,000 or so. Why were they killed directly? So those are the ones who were killed directly, who were warned, as Jewish law states, you can only execute somebody for a crime if they were warned beforehand by 2 kosher witnesses, So the ones who actually had that, went through that whole legal process of being warned, if you do this, your life is forfeit, and they went ahead and did it anyway, and they were warned by two kosher witnesses, those are the ones that the Levites killed. But if you remember the story, there was other things happening there too, because not everybody who participated in the golden calf was warned beforehand, and therefore could not suffer the ultimate penalty of execution. So therefore it says, Halal called Asher Chetu be'edim Masroi Hamisa b'cherev b'nei Levi. The ones who were warned, then they were killed by the swords of the Levites. Asher lo basra, and the ones who were not warned, but did it anyway, not Hashem. Hashem killed them with a plague. Asher lo be'edim bodkam Moshe, sorry, Asher lo basra negafam Hashem. But the ones who weren't warned, but they knew did something wrong, then Hashem killed them. But the ones who had no witnesses at all, Bodkam Moshe Kasaitis. Then Moshe, the rest of the Jewish people who had no kosher witnesses and no warning beforehand, Moshe gave them the water in which Hashem's name had been written on parchment. The ink had gone through it, and they died like an adulteress, an adulterer, together die when they drink the same thing for that crime, and they died in a dramatic way as well. So with three levels, everybody therefore who was involved in the making of the golden calf, they were punished. So what is this for the remainder who were not at any level involved in the golden calf? Why do they have to give half a coin for the building of the Mishkan? We'll see more about that in a second, in order to atone for their souls, kofar nashoi. I thought they were the ones who were innocent of this whole thing. And here the Alshich says something very, very important. And I think that might relate to the strange and worrying times that we're going through now. Ach, ein ki el asher sarfu yedehem b'melchomas biyad asher chotze be'egel. The giving of the half a silver coin from each of the Jews who remained for the building of the Mishkan. Ach, ein the purpose of that was Ki im al sharofu yedehem melchomas biyad asher chotze be'egel. They're giving atonement for the fact that they didn't intervene, that they didn't try and stop that. No, they didn't do it themselves, but they didn't oppose it. They didn't oppose it sufficiently. In fact, some of them didn't oppose it at all. And therefore, that's what they have to atone for. And therefore, each one gets a silver coin. And of course, the presence of God, the mysterious Shekhinah, which dwelt on the Mishkan, which came down to the Mishkan at that time, in preparation for the Jewish people being launched as the chosen people, etc. 10 Commandments, that's smashed. The Shekhinah, the presence of God, disappears, goes up to heaven. Now it's going to come back. But the people who were complicit by their absence of concern, gosh, that's an interesting phrase, complicit by their absence of concern and their lack of intervention, they have to atone for that. And what they're going to do now is give us silver coins, and they made the base or the pillars of the beams that made the wall of the Mishkan. They were big beams with two, they're called yads, two hands that slotted into a base, it was a silver base with a hole, and this made the foundation of the Mishkan. So in other words, now you're going to understand by this donation that you've done something wrong. You regret having done something wrong, you're atoning for it, and now you will bring down the presence of God into the Mishkan, because the Mishkan is going to be the, as it were, the plan B of the Jewish people that Hashem can now return to them. Interesting idea. The Chofetz Chaim, the wonderful and holy Chofetz Chaim, he writes in one of his Sforim about a true story he saw when he was a boy of somebody who had done something very wrong, and was, it was a white-collar crime, but in Tsarist Russia, that's very wrong, bearing in mind that it wasn't a slap in the wrist you got, but rather a 40-year sentence to live in Siberia. Not a nice place to live. And so he was put on trial, he was found guilty, he admitted he was guilty, and he was being taken to the train station to begin the long exile to Siberia. The guards, as they passed the house, it was a town called Rakov, and as they passed the rabbi's house, he asked the guards if he could go and speak to the rabbi. I assume, maybe religious Christians themselves, they would have a sensitivity to getting a blessing from a religious leader. And they walked with him and allowed him to knock on the rabbi's door, and the rabbi opened the door. He said, "Rabbi, I'm going now to Siberia. It's a life sentence. And I'm guilty, and I deserve it, and I know I did it. But it's your fault. Because when I was growing up as a wild young man, you knew that. You knew precisely and exactly what I was getting up to, and you never intervened. So I just want you to know, my life is over, but it's your fault. And off you went. And there's a profound message there. It's the same message here. Now, I don't know why this coronavirus is causing the whole world to crash, as it really is. And I don't know if I'm even going to show this particular Shabbos. And maybe you, who normally go to show, are not. And if you're just one of my Facebook friends who watch this, and maybe your whole life's disrupted in ways which you can only speculate about. And we're all worried. But maybe there's a message from this Parsha, and certainly from the Alshich. If you see somebody who's doing something clearly wrong, and you don't intervene, then that's something that you have to bring an atonement for. And my son's question right at the beginning, I thought was a very interesting. Why do we count? Rashi says you don't count them directly. You give half a coin. Why not count them directly? Because I'm just popped into my mind. But if you're counting Jews, the ones that remained, and you're doing the counting, isn't that a finger? If there's one finger pointing at them as you count them, there's 4 fingers pointing back at you. The ones that are not there to be counted, as a consequence of your inaction and your perhaps lack of concern that led to their absence in the first place. Message from the Alshich and this, etc. Message from the Parsha. If something's going wrong and you can play an active role in stopping it, you must. The consequences for you is a requirement to really say sorry if you don't. Wish all a very good chance.